So, welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World. And my life's been a bit gnarly since the last video on Tuesday. And I'm just about coming up for air. I taught my last class last Friday, and now I'm just waiting for final exams and final research papers to come in. They should all be in by tomorrow afternoon, and then that'll all be done. And meanwhile, one of my books under contract came back from one of the reviewers with some excellent comments, very happy, but made a suggestion about writing a chapter specifically on women and the power of women. And so I set to work on that yesterday, thinking that it would take me about 2 weeks. But it ended up taking me no less than 10 hours to write 4,000 words of a chapter that's going to be between 5,000 and 6,000 words. So who knows? It's the way I work. When I have to do editing and reviewing and all of that kind of nonsense, I drag my feet. But when I have to write new stuff, I just feel the wind in my, well, not my hair, but I just feel like a thoroughbred, you know, kind of like, okay, I'm on the racetrack, ready to go, let's start. And I just keep doing it, and I don't stop. I was working on it last night and finally went to bed after I'd made some phone calls to the United States. At about 10 o'clock, and 2 o'clock I was back up working, and I've been working ever since. And it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've been working for 12 hours, and once I finish this video I'm going to go back to it and do some more. It's just the way I am. So the chapter that I'm working on has to do with power, and that's an important topic in anthropology. So I thought that I would talk about the concepts of power and authority. So let's get started. Back when I was a graduate student, young sprout, full of beans and didn't know anything, we usually referred to power and authority as kind of two sides of the same coin. That is, when you need to get something done, how do you go about it? And the answer, simplistically anyway, was, well, you can do it through power or through authority. And by the definition of those terms in those days, power meant physical force or the threat of physical force, that you point a gun at somebody and they do what you tell them to do. You don't have to actually fire it, although the threat needs to be in there somewhere. Whereas authority comes from your role in societies. So, like, in theory, a policeman can order somebody to do something without drawing a gun because of the position that they hold within the society. And other people, such as teachers or parents or government officials or whatever, can get things done because they have authority. And by those terms we called authority a social construct. That is, it gains its meaning from the agreement of all the people in the society that they have the ability to get things done because we all agree upon it. That's the general definition of a social construct. And maybe next week I'll talk about social constructs more. Anyway, that's a simplistic analysis, and we can be more fine-tuned than that. And I don't have any notes, but I'll see if I can get through the relevant points. We now think of power as stemming from roughly 5 different areas, and this subsumes authority. We now talk about different forms of power. So that the old form, that is getting somebody to do something by the threat of force, is now called coercive power. And it can be applied by anybody, by somebody who's big and strong, somebody who has a sword or a gun or whatever, the threat of force. And what I've been calling authority is now called positional power. That is, that the person who is wielding positional power wields it because they have a position in society that grants them that ability. But there are others, and this is what's really interesting. There is, for example, something which can be called expert power or informational power, and they're a little bit different. Expert power is more associated with, let's say, medical doctors or university professors, scientists who speak publicly, so that an earth scientist can talk about global warming and so forth, and expect to be able to affect changes in people's behavior because of their expertise, their expert knowledge. Now, expert knowledge is not a given because it's also socially constructed. People have to believe that a person is an expert, and it can be countered by other experts. So, for example, you have a pain in your stomach, and you go to a doctor. The doctor says, okay, let me examine you, and comes to the conclusion that you have some kind of tumor that needs to be surgically removed. And you can say, okay, you're the expert, fine. I'll go into hospital when you say. Or you can say, I would like a second opinion. Now, if you go to a surgeon the first time, that person may very well recommend surgery because that's what surgeons do. And if you go and get a second opinion from a second surgeon, you're likely to get the same opinion. But if you go to a different kind of doctor entirely, someone practicing internal medicine in general, or maybe a homeopath, I don't know, if you trust them, or whatever, you may get a different opinion, and you may then have the ability to choose between the experts, because expert opinion can differ. There's also what we can call informational power, which is related to expert power. It's not the same as expertise, but some people can have information that other people do not have, and they can use that to their advantage. I think of blackmail as one of the not so good aspects of informational power. Then there's what we call referent power, which is kind of like charisma, I guess. It's the power of being able to get somebody to do something because you have a way with words, or because you're a well-known figure. So that, for example, a company that wants to advertise a particular brand of makeup will not just have a model come on and say, oh, this lipstick is wonderful, you'll really like it, see how pretty I am. But they will hire Julia Roberts or Andy McDowell, both of whom have done makeup commercials in their time. Because there is a sense that some people, not necessarily the smartest people in the bunch, but some people will take the advice of a celebrity concerning things like makeup or stocks or whatever. They'll take the advice of a celebrity seriously. And that's known as referent power. But it can also just be the general ability of somebody who has a way of speaking, who can convince you. And politicians, of course, rely very, very heavily on referent power, because that's about all they have, apart from their policies. And you could like their policies or not like their policies, but an awful lot of people are going to vote for somebody because they like the way they speak, or because they're celebrities. And there's certainly been a lot of celebrities, particularly in the United States, elected even as president, certainly as governor, because people like the way they speak. Then there's reward power. Reward power is, like, in the simplest terms, I'll pay you money. I have the power over you as your boss because I pay you, and you need to respect my power, because if you don't respect me, I'll stop paying you, I'll fire you. Of course, you also have a certain amount of discretion there to quit as well, but you've got to then find another job. And reward power can come in all kinds of arenas, including like sensory rewards, as well as monetary rewards, or rewards of comfort, all kinds of things. Now, to conclude, what's really important to understand is that this is just an analysis, and that frequently these forms of power all work together. And what's particularly interesting to me is the way in which the power of women in different societies and men in those societies is defined. That in contemporary United States, for example, the power of men is often defined in terms of raw alpha male dominance, physical competition, that the man who's going to succeed is the one who appears strong physically, whereas it's more typical for women to work through referent powers, through persuasion. Not guaranteed, but that's a fair like general dichotomy. And then the question becomes, if like me, you are not a big, strong alpha male, how do you get your point across? How do you get things done that you need to get done? And as I mentioned to one of my students last night, who was delivering his final exam paper, and I told him, I would like you gently to tell your classmates that if they do not have all their materials to me by tomorrow at 3 o'clock, they will fail the course. Well, that's a certain kind of form of power, but I added to that, you should do it gently, And of course he doesn't have any of that power. I'm the one who does. And I said that you can do it gently because I'm the one with a loud voice and the one with the big stick. I'm the one that I have the reward power of the grade. I can be persuasive, I can be, use referent power. I'm not going to use coercive power, certainly not. But reward power is good enough because my students want that reward. And what you might consider is the dimensions of power in your own world. Who has power over you? How can you counter that power? What kind of power do you wield? And how effective is it? Another thing that I was constantly concerned about when I was a very young student, teacher, after being a student at the university, my first job as a teacher, I had a hopeless chance. I had, in a sense, positional power, that I was the teacher and the students were supposed to obey me, but they had no reason to. I taught mathematics, and they mostly didn't like mathematics, and they weren't interested, and they couldn't see the point, and so most of them didn't work. What was I going to do? I couldn't use coercive power. I didn't have any rewards that they wanted, and referent power didn't really work either. It just seemed kind of lame to them. So I was left powerless until I got older. Once I got older, my positional power, my referent power, and my reward power all got stronger. So there it is, the charming nature of power. If you like what I'm talking about in these videos, please tell your friends, please like, please subscribe, and maybe I'll cook on Tuesday. Not sure yet. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Have a good weekend.